Matukio yanayoendelea mahakamani hapo kuhusiana na kesi inayomwandama Gavana wa Migori Obado ni mara ya pili sasa kwake kukamatwa kuhusiana na kesi ya kupatikana kwa bunduki katika nyumba zake Nairobi na pia Migori. Awali kulikuwa na kesi nyingine kuhusiana na ubadhirifu wa takriban shilingi bilioni 2.3 katika serikali yake ya kaunti ya Migori. Pia kuna ile kesi nyingine ya mauaji aliyekuwa mpenzi wake Sharon Otieno. Lakini kuna mengi zaidi tunayofuatilia.
Na bila shaka natakuwa tunarudi kuweza kuangalia kinachoendelea, maana kule Rashid Echesa ambaye ni waziri wa michezo kwa lazima aweze kujibu swali la Joseph Kipskosgei Tonui, na pia vile kuweza kuzungumza kuhusiana na madai ya ufujaji wa hela na kukosa kulipwa kwa marupurupu ya wachezaji wale wa soka walemavu takriban shilingi milioni 2. Ni masuala ambayo yanazungumziwa. Ashafika pale katika jumba la Continental ghorofa ya 5. Ni vyema tuweze kusikia kinachojadiliwa kufikia sasa.
With, and now we are developing rules of engagement so that it is a common standard and there is no discretion, so that it is not that we chose to support this one and we didn't that. Everybody will have to follow the same rules, the same regulations. Everyone submits their calendar at the same time, and everything is presented for funding at the same time, so that in advance all federations know if they are receiving funding or not, and they are able to prepare themselves accordingly.
You have been trained by 2 more members. Maybe you can introduce yourself from ICA and Sebaila.
Good morning. Honorable Haika Mfidi, MP Taita Taveta County, member of this committee.
Honorable Jane Chabaibai, County MP of Marapet and member of this committee. Maybe I'll just ask one question. Yeah, initially before you ordered maybe PS to pay them the allowances, who was supposed to pay the allowances before? Because if they didn't tell you this, then who was supposed to pay them before they came and slept in your office?
Maybe you cannot not these issues. Honorable Maritin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, before paying the tickets, did the ministry take time to do due diligence in terms of getting to know exactly who are these people who are sponsoring the activities, where they are going to sleep? You've talked of, you saw them wearing Sonko's t-shirts. Did you, as a ministry, provided them with alternatives, your t-shirts, Kenyan flags? Did you assign someone from the ministry to accompany them for that function, so that it doesn't become a surprise that they are landing and already Sonko is taking over the project? We can't allow such things to happen. I cannot come from Mainamo and take over operations that has been headed by the ministry. You ought to have taken lead. It boils down to my first comment initially that anybody's responsibility end up being nobody's job. You ought to have taken the lead, assigned someone particularly to accompany them, to ensure wherever they are, they participate, they are well dressed, they are representing Kenya to the time they are learning. Because honestly speaking, it was an embarrassment to the whole country.
Honorable Christine.
Mine is about responsibilities for international events. An event like this that actually is going to make Kenya be known worldwide. The ministry would have no role at all in it, and you leave it to the federation alone. I thought that you have a role to play in terms of facilitating players. Even if it is air ticket that you've done, maybe their upkeep should also be another one. Maybe sports, uniforms. If Sonko sponsored uniform, is that allowed? Individuals sponsoring. We need to have certain structures. We need to know whose role is this and that, and spell out where you come in as a ministry. I think individuals are going to hijack these international events, and the role of the ministry is going to disappear. So I think you better stamp your foot on this and ensure that your role is seen. Otherwise, we are also going to ask you, and will not give you funds, because the ministry is not doing its work. Some other people are taking over and sponsoring, these events. I'm just afraid that the role of the ministry is disappearing.
I think we can be able to respond, but Charles, I think, has something.
Yes, I've got something to ask. We saw the issue of apart from even activities, the issue of rugby team flying Ethiopian Airlines to Paris, and we have got Kenya Airways, which is a national carrier. Do you guys, when you are preparing for this international event, arrange the traveling expenses to our local or rather national airline? This thing we saw it happening, the amputees, I know they flew Ethiopian Airlines, revenue being accrued by another airline apart from Kenya Airways. So what are you guys doing to ensure that whatever we are going to use to fund these things, the revenue is purely back to our country instead of other national airlines?
Thank you. Finally, I think we also felt ashamed when once the team won one of the matches, we saw the Kenyan flag. It was actually the whites who were celebrating, running around. I don't think whether the ministry officials accompanying this team, such that you can even be able to monitor the challenges and also be able to show their beauties that they are also Kenyans and they are recognized by the government. So maybe should be the turn of event, but in future we take such competitions very seriously, because these bodies will come and take over, and next time you'll see the T-shirt of Victor Munyaka in Japan.
And that will not
Yet
happen.
the government is the one who is actually supposed to sponsor. Yeah.
That will not happen, Mr. Chair. Honorable members asked whether we did our due diligence before we gave them air tickets. When the officials came to my office, Mr. Chair, they had letters from the international body indicating that they'll be catered for everything, apart from the air tickets. And I discussed that with the peers before we handed over the tickets to them. So, Mr. Chair, it is an eye-opener. From today, we are going to make sure that we do our scrutiny before we give them air tickets or any support from the ministry. Yeah.
So can you appeal and first the supplementary issues, all of them?
The issue of
the ones by maritime, by and this thing.
And this issue of allowances, Mr. Chair, as you understand, we don't have a budget for that. And as you know, my ministry has been really struggling in terms of even sponsoring these people to go internationally. We also plead with this committee to push for this sports fund so that maybe it can enable us to fund such activities, Mr. Chair. But we don't have that budget for them. We really strain, by the way, to sponsor these people, yeah.
Thank you. And any more response?
Maybe on the issue of Kenya Airways, I would like to say that we now have an agreement with Kenya Airways. They are the official carrier of our national teams. And whenever we have a team going out, we present it to Kenya Airways. However, in some of these situations where the team is already done arrangements outside of the ministry structure, we don't have full control. And again, I hope, Chair and members, you can appreciate the law that governs federations. It is not entirely controlled by the ministry. It's not also that the ministry's role is fading. It's that in some of the cases, we are not squarely the ones who are responsible. But when it is Team Kenya, it has to be funded. We must be the ones responsible, but it also has to go through the proper procedure. And we have to discourage from here the possibility of anybody taking advantage of the image issue. And that's why we are saying we will have one standard, one regulation that fits everybody so that the people are able to follow the law. And I pray that the committee sees the effort of the ministry in ensuring that we create that equalization. We have actually given the highest amount of support to the
Naam, yale ambayo yanaendelea katika kikao ambapo waziri wa michezo Rashid Chesa anahojiwa kuhusiana na matukio ya ile timu ya wanaoishi na ulemavu ambao walilazimika kulala ndani ya afisi yake baada ya kurejea kutoka mashindano wakiwa wanadai marupurupu yao ya shilingi milioni 2.
Naam, na hivi sasa tuelekee mahakamani pia ambapo bado mawakili wale ambao wanamwakilisha Gavana Obado anajaribu kuweza kuwasilisha hoja zao mahakamani, ikiwa ni kujaribu na kuhakikisha kwamba mteja wao ima anaachiliwa kwa dhamana na kuweza kuendelea na kusukuma gurudumu la maisha. Tuweze kusikia kinachoendelea kwa mawakili hao wakijaribu kuweza kushawishi mahakama.
Investigations may not interfere with the probable witnesses. And my lady, it is in the public interest that we are asking for this time to conclude our investigations. You're not noting interfere with in the investigations. And it is in the public interest, Your Honor. We are praying to be given ample time to conclude the investigations. Your Honor, even just to rule out the fact that these firearms could have been used in any other crime. And para 4 of our affidavit has indicated the 3 firearms that were recovered. The types of firearms that were recovered, Your Honor. It is important that we investigate thoroughly why the respondent could have been having 3 firearms and ammunitions having not been licensed. Your Honor, I haven't had an opportunity to look at his replying affidavit. He has confirmed in paragraph 14 of his affidavit that he was informed by his bodyguard that 2 guns, as he has described as Seska pistols, were found in a metal suitcase during the search in the presence of another bodyguard. So he's confirming that these firearms were recovered in his homestead. Your Honor, this contradicts paragraph 12 of his affidavit when he states that no firearm was found within his house in Rapogi and that he has 1 firearm and he has no reason to apply for further firearms within his license. So he's confirming that there's 100% probability or possibility that these other firearms that were recovered in his home did not belong to him. Your Honor, that is where it is important for us to investigate the same. And we believe the 15 days, Your Honor, will not prejudice him, because I believe it will also be in his own interest that he would want this matter resolved. Your Honor, further, on going through the 2 authorities availed by the respondent, that is in their applicant's list of authorities, number 1 and 2. Your Honor, the second authority, that is Wais Abdulaziz Muhammad, clearly distinguishes the matter before you and the matter that was before in the first authority, that is miscellaneous criminal application number 304 of 2016, Michael Rotich. So Waziz supports us. Michael Rotich is distinguished. from our case and from the second authority. My lord, in Michael Rotich's case, the main contention among others was that he was never informed of the charges that he was likely to face since his arrest. In our case, under para 7 of our affidavit, we have indicated that the most probable possession of ammunitions. This is, Your Honor, at this stage, and that is why we are praying for the ample time to rule out whether there is any other offense that could have been committed. If the court gives us ample time, especially to confirm if the said firearms had been involved in any other offense. And Your Honor, this is very important even for the public, noting that maybe there could be unresolved cases and family members would have wanted conclusion in those unresolved cases. In the second authority, that's the Abdulaziz Muhammad, that is in the second authority, Lady Justice Ngenye correctly found that under Article 49, 1G, that's the Wise case. Yeah, the Wise case. On page 5, correctly found, that is on paragraph 1, from line 6, correctly found that Article 49.1 allows the detention of an arrested person without trial. 49.1, subarticle 1, subarticle G, allows the detention of an arrested person without trial as long as he is informed of the reason of his continued detention, and that the continued detention, Your Honor, this is important, is made with the leave of the court. And she correctly found that there was nothing unconstitutional or illegal in the order made for the detention of the applicant without a charge. Your Honor, and that is why we are before you under our notice of motion to pray for the continued detention and to seek leave of this honorable court. We are therefore praying, Your Honor, that this court finds that there are compelling reasons to warrant a denial of bail pursuant to Article 49 and thereafter does order that the respondent be detained for a period of 15 days. As held again by the Wazis Abdulaziz case on page 8 and 9, now we respectively pray that this honorable court does confirm the notice of motion and does grant us the orders prayed in our notice of motion. That is all.
Your Sagana for the response. Allah. Respond alongside with my colleague Mr. Ombetta and begin. The application is proposed we have filed a replying affidavit dated and filed today, 15th of November, by the respondent. And we have also filed a list of authorities with 3 authorities. Now we want to emphasize and show court the levels of malice and bad faith of the police and the prosecution in the application before you. I'll start with paragraph 7 and 8 and the bad faith. Exhibited by the prosecution and the investigating authorities. Your Honor, in paragraph 7 and 8 of the affidavit, the respondents deposed and it's common ground that while the search was conducted, he was in his house in Lavington in Nairobi and not that he had a licensed firearm with him alongside those of his bodyguards, which firearms were verified and all returned to him. To him and his bodyguards. Those firearms are not subject of the dispute now before you. My colleague, Ms. Boniki, who I have tremendous respect for, has voluntarily chose to read half of paragraphs 12 through to 14. I'll help her in the other half. In paragraph 12, he deposed that there was no firearm found in his house in Rapoti, none whatsoever.
Naam, hili niyo kesi dhidi ya gavana wa Migori Gavana Obado kuhusiana na silaha zilizopatikana nyumbani kwake. Inatarajiwa kuwa atapata mashtaka ya kuwa na silaha bila stakabadhi halali.